Hi, Professor Kennedy here. We're going to talk through Unit 3 on this lecture. The first part we're going to talk about is how we get cargo transported from outside of the country, wherever we've purchased the items from, to the United States. This is on your test. This is generally something people struggle with a little bit. We talked about this last week in class. I just want you to remember a forwarder is the moving company. The forwarder is going to get your stuff and the guy that's moving 100 miles away from where you're moving and consolidate it into one truck and take it where it needs to go. So it's saving you money, and it's also saving fuel and contributing less to the environment, et cetera, because it's making sure that a consolidated shipment is full. A broker is someone who's going to help clear something through customs and make sure that you've got regulatory compliance. These are very important. Every single item on this slide, that's why there's a huge gold star, is on the exam. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to write down logistical service providers for importers and exporters. And I'm going to ask you if it's a broker or if it's a forwarder. In this case, you would say that it's both. I'm going to say inbound shipments, and I'm going to want you to tell me that that's a broker. Outbound shipments are a forwarder, but this should make sense if we think about the concept again of the moving company. The outbound shipment is I need to get my stuff from my apartment from Houston to Dallas. The person that lives down the street from me needs to get their stuff to Grapevine or to Irving or to Oklahoma maybe, but it's on the way. The moving company is going to take my stuff first if I'm going to be the last one unloaded, and whoever's going to be the first one unloaded, and put them into the back of the truck so they can get to them first and send it where it's going. This is exactly the same as what a forwarder does for ocean and air and rail. So it would make sense to you, these are outbound shipments, would want a forwarder, and that it would be engaged by the exporter, right? Not the importer, because the person that's actually sending it is the person that would hire the forwarder. So as we go down the rest of that right-hand side, they often will say, we'll get this through customs as part of the shipping, and they are licensed by the Federal Maritime Commission. On the brokerage side, we're going to have someone that's going to meet our shipment perhaps at the airport or at the Port of Houston, and they're going to clear it through customs. They're going to make sure that we've followed all the laws. So if we're importing explosives or something that could have military application, they'll check it and make sure that we have all the right paperwork. They have to be licensed because they're basically acting on your behalf. So they have to be licensed. And the best way that a business can take advantage of a broker is to have a small number of brokers, because the bigger spend you have with the broker, the higher degree of customer service and customization you can ask the broker for. And so an importer would want to have as few brokers as possible. So if you could find a company that will service both New Orleans and the Port of Houston, or they do ocean and they do air, things like that, that would make it more efficient for you and give you a better level of customer service. Power of attorney is something that a customs broker is going to have. It's the ability to act on your behalf. We talked earlier about when no one would say that we would file a 1040. This is another form like that that's referred to as a 5291. It's the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol power of attorney. And I know that's a lot. They say USCBPPOA. That's a lot. But basically what this is an agreement between you and the customs broker that allows them to work on your behalf to clear something through customs. And it makes sure that if you violate a rule, if you import explosives, if you do something that is against the law or you don't have the proper paperwork, you cannot blame the broker. The broker is doing what you've asked them to do. I gave you a link here to a video I'd like you to watch. It explains about power of attorney, and this will help you to understand the entire concept here of how brokers work. A customs broker is not like a FedEx or a UPS. FedEx and UPS are what they call in Latin ad hoc, which kind of just means when you need it. And those are we're going to just ship at FedEx whenever we need to ship at FedEx. When we hire a broker, we have a relationship with a broker, and they have our power of attorney. It's a longer term relationship generally, and we generally will negotiate a contract with them for a service over a period of time. This is on your exam. You can see by the gold star there. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection Department is part of the United States Department of Homeland Security. And there are some things that they mandate that a custom broker will do. One is you should understand, this is part of what's on the test, but the regulations are for the benefit of the government. They are not for the benefit of the broker. Obviously, the government is making laws to protect itself. You cannot give false information, you cannot withhold information, and you are responsible to exercise due diligence. So due diligence is kind of back to that concept that we talked about on the second evening that we met about what would a prudent person do? What would a normal person think as far as being sure that the correct information is on all the forms? You're not expected to be a mind reader. You're not expected to have some heroic knowledge that you have no way of having, but you are expected to be sensible and make sure that you've investigated that what they've told you is correct and you've exercised what they call due diligence. That's what will be on the test. So you're going to need to know that it's for the benefit of the CBP or the benefit of the government, either one. Would be acceptable answers, that you cannot withhold information and you can't give false information and you need to exercise due diligence. So an FPR is a foreign purchasing representative. I think we talked about this on the second night as well. A lot of times you want to hire someone in a country where you're importing something from because it's not practical for you to go to China and set up an office and pay the taxes to the government to have your own business there, etc. So what people do, companies do, is they hire foreign purchasing representatives, and those people already have a business in the country. And so they work with lots of different people. They're not going to just be working for you. They're going to have this as a service. And it allows you to use lots of different sources for products. So let's say that your business is importing tea into a tea shop. You could buy tea from several different companies in China, have your FPR work, consolidate all that, inspect, make sure that the quality is proper and everything is the way that you want it, and then send it over. These are usually very, very custom. And when I say custom, I mean specific and detailed, not like customs that we're talking about, contracts. And the reason I say that is every company is going to want a foreign purchasing representative to do something different for them. So it's a very specific, detailed, I want you to go to these 5 suppliers. I want you to inspect for quality. This is what that means. Here's all the specifications. And then I want you to consolidate my shipments and I want you to make a shipment to the United States every 3 weeks or on the 7th of every month or whatever it may be. Okay, you did an exercise on this for homework. Country of origin is very important. If you remember, we did the exercise about why the cell phone, was not considered made in China, and it was because there were so many components that had come from other countries, and so the country of origin was not designated as China. That's what this is, and we want to make sure that you know this on your exam, and this is just going to be exactly what's in this first bullet. Okay, entry, summary, and liquidation. So as you bring things into the United States, you have to pay the duty. And we know that another word for duty is tax, and you have to file your forms within 10 days after the port or the airport releases them. And many business feel or assume falsely that once they've got something cleared through customs that they're finished, but they're not finished. Unless the Customs and Border Protection Department, which as I said is part of the Homeland Security Department, unless they have said this has been liquidated, that means I've figured out all the money that you owe. So if you can imagine, I might do some different kind of business with you and say, I think you're going to owe me about $10, and you give me $10. And when I figure everything out, I could either find out, hey, you only owed me $9.50, or I miscalculated, or I didn't have a good estimate about something and you actually owe me $10.25. In the first instance, I'm going to give you some money back. In the second instance, you still owe the government 25 cents. And so if you don't pay that, that's called liquidating. That's the final tally of all the money that you owe to customs based on what the current duty rates are and what the value of the goods you brought in are. Once you've done all that, then they're going to assess that final number, and your broker or you, depending on how you have the relationship, is responsible for paying that to the government. If you don't, the process is not complete and you are going to be getting a knock on your door from the government. That's not good. I did not put the harmonized codes on your test, but I do want you to know what harmonized codes are. Harmonized codes are a giant list of things that say, so that the government knows to tariff a television set different than a Corvette, or different than a computer, or different than an item of clothing. And it's just a code that shows each digit means something, and it's a way that the government can classify so that they don't have to individually figure out what a tariff is on every shipment. They can do it based on this code, and then it tells them automatically based on the country it came from and what this harmonized code is, how much tariff you owe. And I said, due to the different number of digits, it can be pretty easy to tell if something's HS or HTS-US, because if you have digits, if it's a 6-digit, it's the longer one. If it's a 4-digit addition, then the longer one, then it's an HTS-US. So we want a perfect entry. A perfect entry means you have no violations, all your taxes are set up correctly, all your duties are paid properly, and everything is going to be liquidated such that you have no further action needed. So we want to make sure that when it gets there, the carrier notifies the importer and says, hey, I'm working for you. You shipped this via, let's say it's Maersk, and it's here. And so they go and they know who your broker is because it's on the forms that you've included with the shipment. The broker says, okay, I'm going to file the entry. You luck out. The CBP says, we're not going to examine your stuff, or they are going to inspect it, but nothing was found amiss. And so that's great. The freight is released to the customs broker. They bring it to the importer, and within 10 days, the broker is going to submit the entry summary, pay the duty on your behalf, and then they'll send you a bill, obviously. And what we call at that point is that the shipment has been either bypassed or liquidated, and nothing else has to be done. Now I want to talk about not so perfect entry. Less than perfect, but it's okay. So same process. The CBP says, we're going to examine this. And they say, you know what? You marked these phones as country of origin China, and they're not. We do not deem that that is the appropriate country of origin. So the tax is different. So they give you what is called a marking notice. And the marking notice tells them that we have a problem and the customs broker needs to get involved and figure out what we're going to do. So they're going to release the goods to you eventually, and you're going to pay the duty. And somebody's going to look at it. We say, oh, you know what? There was an error in classification, and they liquidate your entry. You pay the duty, and nothing else is taken care of. I mean, nothing else is needing to be taken care of. Now we have the worst possible entry. So the merchandise comes in. It's actually worth $1,000, but we misstate the value of it on our packing list or our bill of lading, and we say that it was only worth $800. It's marked incorrectly with the wrong code. So the broker says, okay, I got to call the owner of the company. Well, unfortunately, the owner of the company is on vacation and does not answer the phone. So now the freight is going to sit on the dock. Every day that it sits there, they are going to charge the company fees because you're taking up space. So storage fees. You're also now past that 10 days. And so now you're going to pay some penalties for late filing. So when the importer returns from vacation, they find out that now the goods have been seized, and the customers that you thought you were going to be able to sell these imported goods to have just said, you know what, they're taking too long to get here. We're just going to find another source. And so now you've lost the business. And so I just put a little kind of funny thing on here, but the importer has to sell their fancy house to pay the penalties, the storage, and the other fees. His goods become obsolete, and the whole time that takes all that time to get the mess fixed. So we don't want to do this. Having the paperwork clear is super, super important. Okay, last 3 slides of this chapter are on a completely different topic. So I kind of put a little separator here so you could just kind of change what you're thinking about. But we're going to talk a little bit about free trade. So this is on your exam. The yellow terms will be fill in the blanks next to these definitions. So free trade areas, we know what these are, right? Limit the ability of states to use import and export controls to regulate the movement of goods and services. National treatment is the first obligation of free trade. It basically says, if it's going to be in an internal marketplace, I cannot have any kind of vertical discrimination. Most favored nation is a prohibition on horizontal. So it says I can't say I have an agreement between myself and Spain. If I'm going to give Spain those conditions, I have to give France those conditions. I have to give Italy those conditions. Most favored nation is not allowed. We've talked so much in the second night about the World Trade Organization. You should know about that. All of the members of the World Trade Organization have worked out trade liberalization agreements. So we talked about the word liberalization means free. So if you say I've been liberated, that means you're free. So free trade agreements, but there's no obligation of the World Trade Organization to support free trade. It's just turned out to be that this is the framework that we like to use to arrange agreements between different countries for free trade. And finally, an FTA it bans all tariffs and quotas between trading partners. So you remember quotas, I said you can ship 50 Lamborghinis in every year to our country, and the tariff on them is going to be $5,000. But as soon as you go over that 50 that I've set, now the tariff is going to go to $10,000. So that's what a quota is. And we're not allowed to have tariffs or quotas between members of a free trade area. So one of the ones we talked about, it's a different name now, but when we talked about NAFTA, so that's a free trade area. So we are able to trade with both Mexico and Canada without any tariffs or any quotas. So here's some arguments in favor of free trade. The first night that we met, we talked about comparative advantage. This was when we had the exercise about salads and pizzas and which one we can do better. We also, I think I talked to you about, do I know how to mow my own yard? Of course, but do I do it? Absolutely not. And the reason is somebody else can do it better. So that is absolute advantage. And what that means is I know that the most efficient way to get my yard mowed is to let somebody do it who does nothing else. They are the best at it, so they have absolute advantage. And then that very first bullet is going to say free trade pushes countries to become richer by, and what I want you to tell me on the exam is creating wealth. Creating wealth, okay? Some facts in support of free trade. Everyone who has gone down the road of free trade has been successful. There are some examples who said they were going to follow a free trade policy and they actually did not, like Chile and Taiwan. But most countries are in agreement that free trade is the best way. They will tell you that even countries like the United States who say we are a democratic country and we are going to make sure that we support free trade, we still do things to quote unquote cheat. We say, sure, you can ship all those cars in that you want, but they have to get 70 miles to the gallon. Or we say, we want a specific kind of fill in the blank, or we're not going to let you import it. We have subsidies. We have all kinds of other things that we're doing to protect industry in the United States. Advantages of free trade are spread widely, but the pain of free trade is usually very concentrated. The people who have the pain of free trade are generally disadvantaged countries. The most complex economies tend to be the ones that cheat the most and that have the low wage. They take advantage of things at low wage. So if you think about a country like Mexico that has a lot of unskilled, low cost labor, they're going to make their laws advantageous for other countries to come and do business with them in areas that they can compete, which are low wage, unskilled labor. So that's what I mean by that. So this is on your test as well. 10 benefits of the World Trade Organization multilateral, which means many sides, trading system. So it keeps the peace. Everyone knows that if they have a problem, that the mechanism to deal with the dispute is to go to the WTO, and the WTO will make a ruling. It allows those disputes to be handled well. A system based on rules rather than power means that a country the size of Guatemala has the same power with the WTO as the United States or China or any other large trading partner. The freer the trade is, the more it improves everyone's cost of living, makes it lower because products are less expensive. You can read the rest of these, but I really want you to understand that those first couple are really important. It keeps the peace and it gives a forum for disputes to be handled constructively. This is going to be a fill in the blank on the test. So those two would definitely be two that I would kind of write into your brain. We're going to move on after this and talk through a summary of everything that's going to be on the exam.